Okay, I think we'll get going now. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Lauren Stone and I've got Phil Hearn with me, who's going to take you through the 5 productivity secrets for getting more from QPSMR. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you've got any questions, feel free to type them in, and then at the end of the session, we'll go through and answer as many as we can. So over to you, Phil.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if it's the afternoon in your part of the world. I'm hoping from this session today that however long you've used QPS, or if you're a new user, you're going to find out something that you didn't know or you wouldn't have expected. And I'm going to cover quite a wide spectrum of things in this session this morning, so hopefully there's something for everybody in here, whether your role is preparing questionnaires, doing tables, doing charts in Excel. I'm hoping that there's something in here that you're going to find that you didn't know and you can take it away and use it. I'm going to be covering quite a lot, and I'll be doing some of the demonstrations today quite quickly. So have no fear, I'm recording all this, or it's all being recorded, and it'll be posted on our website within the next day or so, and you'll get an email telling you how to watch bits of the video again, because you might want to follow through some of the techniques yourself to practice them and actually see them in action again, because some of them are quite tricky to use. And whilst I'm showing you how good they are now, when you take them away to your own office, if you try them yourself, you might think, oh, I almost get that, but it's not working for me. So 2 things: you'll be able to watch this video again because it'll be up on our blog within a day or so. And secondly, everything that I'm showing you today will also be sent to you in a zip file. All the files that I'm using will also be available to you, so you can mimic what I've done and develop these ideas perhaps for yourself. So a little bit of an introduction to the program. The whole purpose of this today is to help you get more from QPSMR and perhaps tell you some of those sort of secrets that other people don't know in there, or not everybody knows in there. I'm going to introduce you to some of the new features in the QPSMR companion. Now, some of you may be aware of the companion and some of you might not. The companion is something that's been developed over the last, I think it's about 3 years now, and it's had new features in it that have been added over that period, but many people have stuck with Insight because that does everything, or has done everything, end to end, from setting up your questionnaire right through to doing your analysis, doing CATI interviews if you're a CATI user, and so on. The companion now pretty much does everything, or does everything that that QPS Insight does, and it's got some more goodies in there for you to help you with your productivity. I think the only thing that isn't in the QPS companion now is the telephone interviewing module, which is still a separate, which is still not connected to the companion. It's a separate tool, so people who are using QPS for CATI can do all their work of preparation, their questionnaires, in the companion, but not the actual interviewing yet, and that will be coming in the near future. Now, one topic I'm going to be covering quite a bit today, and probably spending almost the most time on, are add-ins, and I'm going to do a little slide on that in a second just to explain what add-ins are. And the real purpose of add-ins is to sort of make things that are difficult easy, basically. So things that you either can't do in QPS because they're too difficult, or QPS doesn't have the functionality. Add-ins can get you around some situations where it means you can do some things that you just can't do within the QPS structure itself. And sometimes add-ins just reduce the amount of work you've got to do. So something that might be very laborious can be done quite quickly in an add-in. So I'm going to be covering that in detail and show you how they work. I'm going to introduce you to the MRDCL scripting language, which is what QPS used underneath it, the scripting language. When you use QPS, behind the scenes, it's actually writing out things to the scripting language to run tables. And I'm going to take you as an introduction to that. And there's a good reason for that, in that it offers some more productivity, and it's something that people used to perhaps struggle with, going from QPS to a scripting language. But I think more and more people now are using scripting languages to write online questionnaires, for example. So it's something I think that's we've noticed a real change in people's ability to sort of go up to the next level, or have some of their team, perhaps if you're a part of a big team, that can use a scripting language to get even more benefits out of the software. So I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to that, and that will be a 2 or 3 or 4 minute session. And finally, we're going to be looking at getting charts from QPSMR tables, and we're going to be seeing 2 or 3 ways that that will can be done. So we're going to cover 5 topics today in these sessions. You're going to get 7 examples, all of which are free to use. And as Lauren said in the introduction, we'll have a Q&A at the end when I'll attempt to answer as many questions as you care to send. And if you think of a question as this presentation is going on, just type them into the box, and we'll probably do them all at the end rather than covering them as we go along. Otherwise, I think the flow may be disturbed a bit too much. But I'm happy to go back and go over anything that I've covered in the earlier parts. So I just want to have a quick word about what add-ins are before we get to the part on add-ins. Add-ins actually the 3rd topic that I'm going to be covering. But just to say what they are, so you're sort of ready for it when we get to the 3rd part, or the 3rd topic I'm going to be demonstrating. And what they are is that they give you the ability to type in some parameters, so things that are going to drive some tables, so that a magic piece of script, and I think we had a customer recently called them bits of magic, can produce whatever you want in the tables. And so what you don't have to learn the script to be able to do this. They can be just prepared and used on every project, or as many projects as you want to. But all you've got to type in is some settings, like you might say for question 1, I want a summary table with the top 2 boxes automatically added, and you would say that it's question 1, the title for that table I want to be summary of my brands, or something like that, and it'll produce magically a table because there's some script that's reading your parameters and producing what you want. And that will come to life when we actually do that in a little while. And the advantage of add-ins is that they can be customized to your own particular needs. So if you've got particular tables that you want, or variables that you want to derive that are either repetitive to set up, or laborious to set up, or just plain complex, we can set up, or you can set up an add-in that will fulfill those needs. And of course, the beauty of add-ins is that you're not doing it just for one project. You can reuse them on as many projects as you want to. So we're going to look at those a little bit later, and we're going to come to that when we get to the 3rd topic on the list. So let's get into doing some things in QPS now, rather than just talking. And the first thing I'm going to introduce you to is some of the tools in the companion. Now, this is not a full presentation of the new companion software, which I said is now completed for everything except for telephone, for the interviewer part of telephone interviewing. You can set up your CATI questionnaires now in companion, but it's just an introduction, and we'll be doing a fuller launch of this later in the year. But just to give you some ideas of the sorts of things that you can do that will make your life much more easy using the companion. So I'm going to just kick up the companion. Okay, so I've opened up the companion here, and the first little task I'm going to do is to show you how you can do some things that are sort of making some changes to more than one question or variable at a time. So let's just start, first of all, just for anybody who hasn't seen this interface before, I'll just put in a simple question first of all, just to sort of give you sort of some orientation here. So it's a little bit like Insight for those who are more familiar with Insight. So Q1, single response question. Okay, sorry, I just clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, and I can just type in the responses as yes and no. Close that. Ah, I know what it objected to. I didn't put my question in, sorry. Okay, so I put my question in. I will put in one more question now just because I did that so badly. So insert question 2, single. It's because I didn't put my question text in. Have you heard of brand X? Now I go to responses, add the responses. That's better. Okay. Now I can click out. Okay, so that's putting in a simple question. I managed to make a mistake on question 1, which confused me. All right, now I'm going to look a bit further, and I'm going to look at now putting in some rating statements and just looking at how that might work, and now showing you some of the new tools and how, more importantly, you can edit those tools. So let's put a new question in. Let's call it Q3A. So this is a different way now of doing rating statements. So we might ask about some magazines. So how do you rate the magazine Cycling in Thailand? And the responses for that might be very good, quite good, okay, quite poor, very poor, not sure, don't read. Okay, now one thing here that I'm not going to go through everything, of course, in the companion at this stage, but here if I had these in a spreadsheet, I can just paste these in, or in or on a paper questionnaire, for example. You can just copy and paste those texts in there, and it'll all work absolutely fine. So there's another little advantage you get of the of using this. So there's my first entry in there. You can see it behind there, Q3A. That's where I've got my first statement in my rating scale, and now I can go new, duplicate this entry. It's automatically going to make it 3B. All I've got to do is add in my next magazine, which is Bike Weekly, and I can add another one in, 3C, and you can see now that rating scales are much easier to put in than they were, sorry, on my bike. And one more, we'll do 2 more, shall we? Duplicate again, just change the text here, on 2 wheels, and new, duplicate the entry, and we'll do a 5th one in here, Bikers Monthly. So they're my magazines that I've rated, and I can close that out, and you can see now I've got my 5 magazines. Now, one thing you might have noticed me doing, and it was a deliberate mistake, I have to say, was that I didn't put any scores on that. And certainly in Insight, that's quite a boring problem, because you've got to go through and edit each of these or delete them and re-enter the grid, which is time consuming. But you get a new tool in Companion. You get the ability to be able to do a block update. So what I can do here is I can go into Edit, block update responses. You'll see also, for example, if you wanted to apply a filter to all these, you can apply block filters now. So I could apply a filter to this question of perhaps people who said yes at question 1. But I'm going to do a block update to responses. So I'm going to click on this, and there's various things that I can do. I can put rejects on here. I can add score values. That's the one I want. I can put ranking in or add summary rows, but it's score values that I forgot to apply. And so it was deliberate, that. So I might, for very good, put 5 on there, and then say I want them in descending order. Now that's not quite done what I want, because you can see for not sure it's given a score of 0. So I'll just quickly take that off, close that out. Oh, I didn't actually save it. I'm not doing very well today. Edit block responses. I'll do it once more. Score values. 5, descending, take that one off. I've just quick before I saved it, so apply it and close, and now I have got that applied to all these entries. Now if I click on Q3C, for example, individually, you can see I've got my scores 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 set up. so that when I come to analyze that later, it will automatically give me mean score, standard deviation, and so on. Now, the next thing I might want to do is to add a top 2 box and a bottom 2 box. And anybody who's familiar with QPS will know that to do that, I'm just going to save this before I go too much further. Just before to do that, I have to create a variable to do that. Now, there is a trick in here, so I'm going to go into Project Global Settings, and I'm just going to say that when I paste into a variable, it will make a multi for me, because that's the setting I want here, and you'll see why in a minute. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say edit, copy, paste as variable, and you can see now that I've got 5 variables generated just like that, which are copies of these variables. And of course, now I can reuse the block edit feature to add in my top 2 box and my bottom 2 box. So I can go back into the edit command, block update of responses, go to the summary rows, and you can see it's already got this done for me. So I can do a top 2 box with the top 2 rows. If I wanted 3, I can just change that counter. So there it is. I could edit this to say top 2 box if I wanted to. And we create a summary response, and it's put it here, but I can move that in a minute, and a bottom 2 box. Create that code, and it's put it here. And if I want to just move, if I wanted those at the top of the table, I could put it first, and the bottom one I could move up. So it's here. Apply those changes. So now if I were to do a table on this variable rather than the original question, I'd get my top 2 box and bottom 2 box at the top, followed by the relevant responses. And if we looked at VQ3C again, there you can see what I've got. It's my top 2 box, bottom 2 box, and so on. So really quick, these tools to set up things like block edits and block changes, applying filters to a number of questions, and so on. So that's the sort of first thing I wanted to show you. That's just some new tools and tricks that are in the companion. There's a lot more in the companion. There's things like building some more complex tables now very easily in the companion. I'm not going to cover that today. That's just to whet your appetite and to explore it. If you want to upgrade it and get that, it's a very, very small fee to upgrade to the to companion. So it's something that I really would recommend to people who are doing any amount of productivity. All right, so that's the first thing that we've had a look at today. I'm going to save that, and that will be saved in the files that we send to you. The next is to sort of look at the companion from a different angle, and that's doing tables. So let's find the companion again. There it is. And if I just open up a project I've already got started on here, just make sure I get the right one. The topic 2.1, questionnaire 1. So you'll see this is pretty much the same project as I set up just now. It's just that I've got some tables set up with this one as well. So in here now we can go into analysis, which is the old tables module for those who are more familiar with QPS Insight. And I can do some more things than I did before. So I can open up a QTF just like I used to in Insight. So that sort of feature and functionality is there, albeit with some extra tools. But the other thing that I get now are some summary reports, so a combinations report, and ability to do some quick analysis and drilling down into the table. And these are really worth exploring in a little bit more detail on what I'm going to do in the sort of 2 or 3 minutes I'm going to spend on this. So something like a summary report is something you can produce. You open your data file and you can see immediately at the screen here, I've got 10 respondents, 7 of them say yes, no, and I can click down to any question I want to here and just look at my data. There's those nets that I produced just now. I put net good this time in my text, but you can see they're the same thing. 70% were net good, 40-30 is the split, and so on. So that's a summary report that you can very quickly produce that's new. You can do a combinations report as well. So you can pick a question that's a multi. This isn't going to be particularly interesting because I haven't got much in this. It's just summaries. But if we click OK on that, I can produce an XLSX file. And if I go to the folder, here it is, you can see that here's my records. And what I've got here are the combinations of code. So this is telling me that this one here has got the net good as well as the good. It's more appropriate, this sort of analysis, when you've got brands and you want to see what brands people are using in combination. So that's what it's really for combinations of answers and brands that are being used. I'm just having trouble closing that out because I've got two windows on top of each other. Okay, so let's just maximize that. So that's something else that you can do. Now, the other tool that you get in here, besides being able to produce tables in a similar but more functional way, a fully functional way than you can in Insight, is you've got this data drill down tool where we can open the data and you can quickly produce tables just by dragging things around the place. So I could put question 1 in my columns, I can pick question 2b, and I get immediately a table of question 1 by question 2b. Up here, I can add percentages if I want to. I can get rid of whole numbers if I want to. I can get horizontal percentages if I want those. I can output these to Excel or view them in Excel. So I can just click on this button here to prepare them and view them in Excel. And there's my tables in Excel now with the percentages. So some very quick tools for browsing your data and looking at what you want to do, perhaps in a fuller analysis, or what banners you want to build. A really good starting point to finding your way around your survey data, sort of over and above what Insight really gives you as an ease. And you can put more than one table in here. I could drag, I've already got 2B, let's pick another one. Let's pick Q2D, drag that in, and now I've got 2 tables in here, and I can just toggle between those if I want to. VQTD's got the nets in there, whereas Q2B has just got the original source data. And indeed, I could just drag all the questions into there if I wanted to, and get several tables here that I can look at. I can apply filters, as you can see, just like I can in Insight if I want to drill down a bit further into that. And it has some other tools in there to do distinction analysis as well, which is a sort of form of significance testing, where you're comparing 2 variables side by side to see whether how distinctions are distinctive, the analysis, the significances between 2 variables. So that's something else that you get, which is not in Insight. So there's a sort of, no pun intended, an insight into the companion. We're going to close that out now and go on to a third topic. And the third topic, as I promised you, was add-ins. And what add-ins are, as I said in my introduction, is the ability to set some parameters so that some script that either has been developed for you, perhaps by us or someone else, or somebody who perhaps in your team can write script. You will need training to, if you're not familiar with script that sits underneath QPS and our MRDCL software, you will need some training to be able to develop your own add-ins. But I want to just give you examples of how they work and what they can do for you. So I'm going to open up this. I'm opening this up in Insight now, which is a bit more of a familiar place rather for many people, I think, on this webinar rather than in Companion, but I could do it in Companion as well. And I'm going to open up some tables that I've already got ready. And here are the tables. So if we look at this project here, you can see it's got gender, age, some rating scales, Q1 underscore 1 to 5, Q2 underscore 1 to 6, and another one down here. We're going to be using these as a sort of questionnaire we're going to use for demonstrating add-ins. Whoops, I've just shut that. So back to the tables here. So the first table that's in here is just a standard table. It is Q1 underscore 1, the rating of the first brand, by a banner that's already been set up, which has got age and gender on it. So nothing particularly fancy there. But now the next one is using an add-in. And if I just widen that, if I can widen it enough, I'll try it and widen it a bit more. Yeah, I can nearly get it in there. If I just go full, yeah, I got nearly done it. There we go. What you're seeing here is a whole series of instructions, and these are what we call parameters that are telling the add-in what to do. So what I want to do here, if we remember well, there was a rating scale, which I think was question 1, which ran from question 1_1 to question 1_5. We did a table here, which was question _1 by banner. Now I want a summary table of all the 5 brands side by side, all the columns side by side. And so there's an add-in that's been developed that's going to do just that for me. And what's more, I want it to give me a top 2 box as well. So what's driving this add-in is a command which says data cols, and that's a key name, and it lists the 5 brands. There they are. Another set of parameters that tells QPS that the variables I'm using are Q1, and there's 5 of them. So I want Q1_1 to Q1_5, and another set of parameters where I want the table to be number 2, and I want the title of my table to be summary brands. And then you can see it inserts, that's the last command, I can't quite stretch that, it inserts a piece of script using these parameters to drive out the tables that I want. Let's run it and see what this does, and it'll become a bit more apparent then. Well, there's my first table. There's the standard table, Q1_1 by my banner of gender, age, Q3, Q4. And here's the summary table that it's magically produced. And so what it's done, it's got these column headings from that first data statement that I put in, data statement cols, and there's the 5 texts. It's used Q1_1 to Q1_5 because that's what I told it to do, and it says there were 5 of them, so that works. And it's automatically put in a top 2 box for me because that's what that particular add-in does. Now, your first reaction to that might be, well, that's quite complex to do. How am I going to remember to do that? Well, let's just work through that. Let's delete it and see if we can do it again. Now, what most people do is they have a cheat sheet because it's hard to remember all these things. So what I do, or what many of our customers do that use add-ins, is they have a Word document or something similar that has all the details they want. So the add-in that produces a summary with a top 2 box is this chunk of code, whereas the summary table with a top 2 box and a bottom 2 box is something slightly different. And then, of course, you can have more down here. So what I'm going to do now is to copy that, insert my syntax, paste it into there, and now you can see the things that I've got to do. And if you go back to the red, it reminds you the things in red are the things you've got to edit. So we can go in here, just to say there is something to the left there. So I've got to here enter the column texts, which was Ash, whoops, I mean uppercase, Ash something. And I'm just going to put in A, B, C, D, 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 E, E, E for speed of entry. The next thing I've got to remember is which question number it is. Well, it's question 1, and there's 5 statements. So they're my 2 things here. The next thing I've got to do is the table number. I'd like it to be table number 2. And I've got to put in a table title, which is Q1 summary of brands. And hopefully I've done that correctly. And now if I run this with my add-in, there it is. And you can see there's my add-in working. It's producing my top 2 box because that magic insert summary top 2 is doing all the work behind the scenes, by being fed the parameters that I need. And the parameters I fed were ASH, BBB, CTC, DDE, because I couldn't remember their names. And I fed it Q1 to Q1 underscore 1 to Q1 underscore 5 as my questions, and it's automatically put in the top 2 box. And that was the title I asked for, summary of brands. I could have put something else. And just to see that in action, just in case, if I put in the word some brands, or if I could type, it would help. Some brands here. You'll see that if I run it again, that text, for example, would update automatically. And now I'd get summary of some brands. And of course, I could add another one for the next rating scale, which might be number 5, for example. And that would be another set of questions, table 3 this time. And we might have that as likelihood of buying as my table summary, and click OK to that and run that. And I should now, with a bit of luck, get another summary table for question 5 now, where the top, I probably wanted the top 3 box there because it's got 3 agreed. But you can see what I'm getting out is a different rating scale, just driven by that one series of commands that I copied and pasted from Word. So that's the first add-in, and that'll be freely available to you. That'll be sent out. There's a script underneath that that's going to read those parameters and do what we've asked for. So let's now look at a couple more that do things that are actually even cleverer than that and really save you more time. The second thing I'm going to show you is something that I know people find very difficult to do, in fact almost impossible to do in QPS, except without a lot of work. And that is when you've got something like a question with reasons, maybe an open-ended question, and you want to put some nets in there and rank those tables. So if I do a quick table here on reasons by the banner, it needn't be, but we will do it by the banner. You can see I've got some answers coming out here. Some are saying it's a good brand. Some are saying it comes in a red box. It's their favorite product. It's useful. It's a green box. It's good value. It's cheap, and so on. What you typically want to do with that, and what you can't do in QPS without an add-in, is that you want to put some nets in there, and you want to rank those nets so that the highest net goes to the top. The responses that make up that net also get ranked, and the next highest net then comes out. Wouldn't it be nice if that was easy in an add-in? Well, it is. Let me show you that net working, and then we'll talk a bit more about it. So I didn't want quick tables there. Let's open up a set of tables. And here I've got one prepared. I'm not going to tell you about the first line. It's just setting a table number. But let's look at this one. So this one is driven by a spreadsheet. So here, the parameters I'm setting are slightly different. This time, the parameters I'm setting are a workbook, which I've called codeframes.xlsx, a question, reasons, which we saw just now, analyzed as it was, the name of a variable I want to create that's going to make my nets for me, and the banner I want to use. Oh, sorry, what I want to create and the banner I want to use. So there's 5 parameters here, and then again it inserts some script that's going to produce the table magically. Let's run it first and see what it looks like. So the table I get out now is much more interesting because packaging comments go to the top because everybody mentioned something to do with color, because 8 people said green box, 4 said comes in a red box, 4 said red and green. So that's all ranked in order, and red and blue came lowest because that's the lowest. Favorable comments came next because 9 people said that. Within favorable comments, useful got ranked the next highest, 6, 4, 3, 2. and price comments became lowest because only 3 people mentioned cheap products and 2 said good value. Oh no, I'm wrong actually. There's no mention of colour, is 3 more at the bottom in a little category of its own. So you might ask what's driving all that. Well, what's driving all that is that workbook that you saw me referred to, and here it is. And what's controlling everything that goes into that table. So this isn't really learning scripting at all. This is actually just teaching someone how to use a worksheet. You can see there's my 11 codes that were in my original questionnaire. And what this adding is doing is saying, well, I want to put this one into group 1, this into group 3, this into group 1, 1, 2, and so on. And down here are my nets, and they're indicated that they're nets because they've got an X in a column called subtotal. It could be called nets. You can call it what you like. So really, this is the definition, if you like, of my nets. And these are the nets that they go into. And just to prove that this really does work, and all I've got to change is something here. You may remember when we ran that table just now. I'll just run it once more just to remind you. You may remember that because green box is 8, it goes to the highest ranking. Let's put green box mistakenly in the price comments and see what it does to the table. So let's close that table out. Let's take green box, which is correctly in number 3 at the moment. Let's move it into the price comments, which is number 4. Don't forget to save it, as it won't know what we've done. Close that out. Run this again. And now price comments has gone to the top of my table. Now, if you were to do that in QPS, Insight or Companion, that one activity would mean reordering all your responses to be in the order that you found them, rebuild all your subtotals. I would estimate that would take you 20 minutes for one question. If you had 10 questions like that and you wanted to make a change, it would probably take you an afternoon or a whole day. So it really is saving you a lot of work because you've got an add-in now that is controlling what comes out in your tables. And again, that add-in is free for you to use, and we'll be sending that out to you. So this add-in is a really powerful add-in. It's one of the ones I do like because it means that you can do some things that you just can't do. But it also means if you've got researchers who change their mind and want some new subtotals, they can do it themselves almost. You've just got to teach them. So if we have a new subtotal here, which we call number 5, we need an X in there. I could put perhaps red and green box into subtotal number 5 now rather than where it went in number 3. And that's all I've got to do to now rerun my table, and you can see I've got a new subtotal somewhere coming out. Here it is, a new subtotal with 4 people in it with red and green box, and they've come out of the favorable comments one now, or the packaging comments now, and I've obviously not done a good job on my subtotals because it shouldn't really go in there. But you can hopefully see just from that simple demonstration how easy it is to have add-ins that do what, as I said, somebody calls magic pieces of script that can do magic things for you. So that's another add-in that I'd commend to you that I think's very useful. I've got one more to show you. I'll do this one quite quickly because I can see time's ticking by. The third example, I'm just going to take you straight to the workbook here. This is another workbook driven example. This one probably does need developing a little bit if you want to use it for real. But it's working on rating statements again. And again, it's just an example of the 101 things that you can do with add-ins. They can be repetitive things that you want to make simple, or they can be complex things that you just simply can't do in QPS, like the one just now with nets and ranking. So this one's more of a practical one that just saves you lots of time. I know I sat with a client once for this, and they were talking about rating statements, and I think during the course of a training session, they come up with 15 different types of tables that they generate sometimes from rating statements. So these might be a table for each statement by a banner. It might be a summary table like we produced earlier with the columns side by side. It might be with the rows one underneath the other for each rating statement. It might be a mean score summary. It might be a top 2 box. It might be a top 2 box and a bottom 2 box with all the original responses. It might be a summary of the top 2 boxes. We came up with 15 different types of table. Well, this add-in that we can give you here gives you 4 of those 15 options. And we've got one here that's a top box, one that's a top 2 box and a bottom 2 box, one that's some sort of summary. I'm not sure what it is. We'll run it and we'll find out in a minute. And another which has got called summary 2, which is another type of summary. So let's just run that, because this is what QPS is going to read for its instructions to tell it which tables to run or what types of summary tables to run. So let's just see that in action. Let's close that out. Let's open up the QDF and the QTF. So here's example 1, and let's open up the QTF. So if we widen this, you can see again it's referring to my workbook, and it's just saying which question it wants to pick up, the first one, the third one, or the second one, and it inserts rating. So really almost nothing to learn there. You could use this add-in without any training whatsoever, because what's controlling it is the X in those columns. So if we run this, we get out some tables. So what we're getting out now is a top 2 box for the first brand at question 1 with the responses, and that for the second statement, for the third one, for the fourth one, the fifth one. And then it's going on to question 5 and doing the same thing with the top 2 box. But for question 5, when we scroll down, I think we're getting something else. We're getting a summary of the columns side by side, and we're also getting a mean score summary. So let's relate that back to the workbook we were looking at just now. So we're only getting the top 2 box and the responses for Q1, and for this one we were getting that as well, and a summary table of the columns side by side and a mean score summary. So just by changing this here, I could have a top 2 box and a bottom 2 box, and let's have a mean score summary now for question 1. Just by putting X's in these columns and having entered these small bits of information here in my spreadsheet, I can save that and I can run this again, and you will see now what I've got. I've got a top 2 box and a bottom 2 box for each brand at question 1. And there's my mean score summary for all the brands. And we could have another one that ranked that so that the 4.1 went to the top of the table, for example, if we wanted an option that ranked it, for example. So what we're getting here is we're getting a system that allows you to design something in Excel that has a magic script underneath it that will read the controls in this workbook. The first example had parameters that we typed in. This one's effectively got its parameters inside a workbook, inside a worksheet, and automatically generate tables for you. And of course, you're not just doing this for one project. You can reuse this from project to project as many times as you want to, and it will work absolutely fine on every project. That's my bit on this particular topic. We're going to go on to a shorter and 4th and 5th topics now, as part of this 5 hacks, because that, although that was topic 3, we had 3 examples there, so you've still got 2 more hacks to come, and hopefully I can just get those into the last 15 minutes with a little bit of time for questions, because these ones are a bit quicker.
Sorry, Phil, to interrupt.
Yep.
I have a couple of questions relating to those add-ins. So did you want to do those now?
Yeah, we can do, sure.
So the first one is related to the first add-in.
Yep.
And it says, would the script require the questions to be Q1 underscore 1, Q underscore 2, or would it recognise something like Q1A or Q1B?
That's a very good question, actually. You could set another parameter that told it whether it was numeric or alpha. So let's say you have two types of question numbering that you use, where sometimes you use Q1 underscore 1 and Q1 underscore 2 as your names, and other times you use Q1A, Q1B, Q1C, and perhaps other times you have Q1 underscore A underscore B underscore C. I don't know how many different types. You could just say that's another parameter that I want to set. And you would either give that parameter a name or a number, and it would automatically then recognize that system that you used. So yes, you could either have a separate add-in if you wanted to for each of the types of naming conventions that you used, or my preference would be to have a parameter which you might call one numeric, one alpha, and one underscore alpha, for example, and then it would automatically read that and respond and treat your variables as you happen to have named them in that particular project. I hope that answers it.
The second is related to the second add-in,
yeah,
and that's, can you put the same code in two separate nets?
Not with the add-in that I've got there, but yes, you could. It's again a case of design. So if the add-in was designed to allow you to put codes into two nets, so going back to that, it's a design issue, this. So if we go back to the second add-in, you're quite right what you observed there, that my particular add-in here only allows you to put them into one, but you could design it so that it had subtotal 2, and you had some way that you could, sorry, not subtotal 2, that's incorrect, but you could have another column here called group 2, for example, and you could say, well, this one also goes into group number 3 as well, and the add-in would have to know that and be programmed, and the script need to read that. But yes, that would be absolutely perfectly fine. Yeah, it would just need to change the add-in to do exactly what you want. But that's the whole beauty of these. You can customize them to do as many things as you want to. And another thing, I know we've got people who've got customers who have got an add-in where they say, for example, I don't really want code 2 comes in a red box to appear on my tables. I'd actually like to merge it with code 8 and hide it. So you could have a column, I know some customers use this, where you've got a column called merge, where you tell it, if you put code 2 and you put code 8 here, it would hide code 8 from the output and put it with code 8 down here. And so you've actually effectively merging codes together. So yes, you can do what you like with these add-ins. They can, you know, it's up to you basically what they do and how they behave.
And the last one is, what about the rest of the parameters from that summary add-in? That's the third add-in.
I glossed over those because of time. Where is it? The third add-in is here. Open tables. So the parameters here were the workbook, the number in that workbook that I'm picking up, and then just calling the add-in ratings. I need to open the workbook to remind me what it's calling. So yes, it's referring to this number here. So if we flick back and forth here, if I can do that. So this is the workbook name, my workbook.xlsx. That's what I've just got open. That one there is referring to the one here. So it's doing them in an illogical order, effectively. So by putting in, we go back to my script. So here I'm calling 1, 3, and 2. So what that means that when I get my tables out, it's doing question 1 first because that's 1, then question 5, and then question 2. Not particularly exciting that. It could just go through and do them all in sequential order, but it's just showing that you can decide which one to call, and otherwise they're the same. So that's all the parameters are there.
Okay, the rest are much more generalized, so we'll leave those until the end.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so let's go on to our fourth topic. which is really where inadvertently, sort of when you're getting to Addins, you are using script underneath it. This is something just to open up your eyes to what's possible. I'm not going to spend long on this because it's another full hour session and more. But if you have a project here, it's okay. If you have a project and you run it, as we've done several times already, and this time you can see I've just got I've just pasted in all the standard tables. You will notice that what it does is it makes, or you may have noticed, it makes a file called an STP file. And that effectively is the script that QPS is running. So what QPS does when it runs tables is it generates your script, runs it for you using MRDCL or the scripting language that's underneath QPS, and produces your tables. Now, it doesn't tell you it's doing this, it just does it. Now, be careful, don't do this with quick tables, because what QPS rather craftily does with quick tables, it deletes the script having run it. So that's the reason I opened up a tables file here and ran it. If you just do quick tables, if you look in the Explorer, the tables will be there while it's running, but then as soon as it's finished, they'll disappear again. So it's no good to you. So you'll need to have a script that's got at least one table in it, sorry, a QTF that's got at least one table in it, and you'll get this STP file. And if we open that up in MRDCL, which is the scripting language, you'll see that what it's generated here is a pile of script, which is what it's actually running when it runs your tables. Now, this is a really good way of learning more about the script if you want to go up one level and start to take advantage of what a scripting language like MRDCL can do for you. QPS outputs fairly laborious code. It puts it out in a fairly unfriendly way and a less than useful way. All this information that you can see here, for example, where it's a bit like a copy paste, you can write in just a few lines of code and say, well, Q1 is like Q2, sorry, Q1 underscore 1 is pretty much the same as Q1 underscore 2, except the column's different and the brand is different. And I'll illustrate that now perhaps with some tables down here. These are the tables that it generated for me. And what I've done here, you can see what I've added into the script. I've actually added what's called a loop. Now you need to learn all this, and we've got, I think, about 50 videos that can teach you this scripting language. You will need to buy a CO license to upgrade to be able to do these things, for these particular things. But you can write a loop in the scripting language, 1 to 5 for my question 1 to question 1 underscore 1 to question underscore 5. I can build a variable that's going to pull in the top 2 box, in other words, the first 2 codes, and then all the codes. And my text is top 2 box plus the original text that were there. And my title is the same. And I'm given the tables, I put the tables in here in the scripting language rather than this rather longhand way that they're doing here. So here are 6 lines of code that are going to produce me 5 more tables rather than this long script here. So add a top 2 box as well. So if I run this, and I'll run this in MRDCL, I could have run it in QPS. If I run this and go to the bottom, you'll see there's the 5 tables I produced for the 5 brands, and it's got my top 2 box that I've added in, and I've done that all through script, whereas the previous tables were just done from script generated by QPS. So QPS generated the script for the first 21 tables. This is my own script that I've generated to do those tables. But that's a good way of learning. If you want to sort of look and experiment to see whether QPS is the right product for you, sorry, MRDCL is the right product for you to help you with your productivity, you can take a trial license for 1 month from us, look at the script that QPS generates, watch some of our MRDCL scripting videos, and you can start to learn how MRDCL might improve your productivity. And when you use MRDCL, you can find that the productivity absolutely zooms on a whole range of types of projects. I have got that here, the sorts of projects where you'll find MRDCL a real advantage. are things like tracking studies, multi-country studies, projects with repeat data which you can't really handle in QPS, things like diaries where you're collecting information for each day of a week for 2 weeks, or usage occasions. Or I know people have tried in QPS to do what people have ate or respondents have ate at maybe 20 meal occasions over a week, and that is very complex to handle and almost impossible to handle in QPS, but MRDCL will handle all that with script for you. Complex data, complex analysis, repetitive analysis, multiple runs of tables, all those sorts of things are very powerful. Plus you can build your own add-ins very easily as well and test them and refine them for your QPS users. So there's a lot in there, but it's, as I say, I've only got time for an introduction here, and if people want to know more about that, we can refer you to videos that'll take you a lot further, and just drop us an email and we'll do that. So the final topic, that's going to be quite a quick topic, I'm running slightly over time here, is getting tables from QPS into Excel charts. I'm going to very quickly do this. There's two methodologies that you may or may not know about. If we run tables in QPS, we get these tables out like this. You probably know that you also get those tables out in a CSV file as well. And there's some tricks here that you can do to make it easier to work with these, to make charts in Excel, or ones that you can paste into PowerPoint or even in Google Sheets and so on. One of the tricks that I teach people that may be obvious, but you know already, but you might not, is to use the filter statement. And that enables you can see when you get these tables, you've got a marker in column A, and typically what you want for charts are just the column headings, possibly the title, and the figures. So what you can do is use the filter tool in Excel to give you just those things. So the title is the VT statement, the column labels are these statements, and the text, sorry, the figures are the RWs. And now you've got something that's much easier to do a chart. So if you want to do a chart that compares maybe, I don't know, these figures here, we're going to do this very quickly. You can just insert a chart. I'm going to do something very quickly here just to show you this. And now I've got a chart very quickly. I haven't pulled in the title. I'd need to refer that to this line up here to get the title. But you can see very quickly you can get from figures to charts. And the thing that people often say, well, that's okay, but what about if I want percentages? Because there, if I pick percentages from my filters, I don't get the text. And that's a very good point, but there is a way around that. So if you pick the percentages, it does all go wrong because the texts are aligned with the RW rows. But there's a way around that as well. I'm not going to spend too long on this, but I'm just going to quickly show you how you do that. All you've got to do, oops, let's close those tables. All you've got to do that is to go into global table settings and switch on the option MPRC for not print raw counts. Run it again. Oops, I've done something wrong, have I? I've done something wrong here. I managed to damage my tables there. Okay, well, MPRC is the format. There is a video that explains it. I'm not going to dwell on that, but that will actually then align your percentages with your text, so you can do a chart on percentages. There's a video available on that if you want that. The other thing that you can do, it may be because I had the tables open. I left the file open. That's why it didn't run. Okay, I'm going to carry on because I think you can find that yourselves after this session. All right, so the final thing I'm going to show you is a tool that's free to use from us. Nothing to stop you using it. I want to make sure I haven't damaged those tables anyway when I ran them just now. No, there they all are. The final tool I want to show you is something called Table Indexer. Now we're putting Table Indexer inside MRDCL later this year, but at the moment it's available as a standalone piece of software and it's free to use. And what it allows you to do is to take tables and put them into some sort of form so that they're easy to work with when it comes to doing charts, or just having an index set of tables. Although the companion, in fact, does some of this as well. Also does this as well. So there are two different ways you can do this. So here I can open up my tables. I can click the plus sign, and this is free to use this software. Just ask for a copy and you'll get one. I can select the tables that I want to produce my report on. I can then go to my settings up here, and I can choose which types of tables I want. So maybe I want a set of tables with the figures in them and the column percentages, not the row percentages. I'll have figures and columns side by side, not column and row, and not all values. So we'll turn those off and just get 3 worksheets to come out at the output. Let's select run for that. Oops, I haven't checked an output. Let's choose an output file name. I'm going to call it my output and save it. And if we run that now, we should get a document called myoutput.x. There it is, I couldn't see it. And that's produced me an index of all my tables with hyperlinks in here and worksheets with each of the 3 categories that I picked. If I pick the vertical percentages one, you can see it goes straight to table 7 with the vertical percentages. Now, that's not particularly helpful when you want to come and do a chart, because the rows aren't consecutive. So we probably don't want our markers, which gives significance testing, and we probably don't want that blank row. So again, we can just set a parameter for that. I can go back into my settings here. I can close that out. Oops, so I've just opened up the workbook. You can open it inside, close it there. I just go into my settings and I can say I don't want markers and I don't want blank lines, and I can go back and run it again. And I'll open it in table indexer this time. And this time when I go to a table, let's go to table 7 again, you can see I've just got the figures I need here. So if I want to do a chart of those rows, I can just highlight that and get my chart, which I can then link into PowerPoint, or I can do this with Google Sheets obviously as well, without having to select the rows. It's all there for you. So that's another tool that we have available to you that's free, and as I say, that's being incorporated in a slightly enhanced form in MRDCL later this year. So I'm going to stop there because I've already ran 4 minutes over what I planned to, but if we've got any questions, I'm very happy to take those in the last few minutes of this webinar.
Yeah, we do have a couple.
Okay.
A couple I think you have kind of answered along the way.
Okay.
We'll just go over them again. Is QPS Companion a replacement for QPS Insight or something extra?
Well, both, I suppose, is the answer to that. It is a replacement. It's sort of in development the last sort of 3 years, and so it's been available to people in parts, if you like, for the last 3 years. But yes, everything is now available in the companion. You can set up all your questionnaires, do all your analysis, get all these new tools. It is worth exploring to find all these tools, because I've only shown you just a couple of examples today. But yes, it'll very much be the replacement. There'll be no more development on Insight Companions, the tool to use, and it's fully functioning now. We've got about 10, 12 videos that show you how to use the companion. We will be adding another 10 of those later this year that focus more on the analysis side of things, because those videos aren't available yet because the software's only just become available. But yes, it is really is. I see it as a replacement for Insight.
Could I do weighting through the add-in spreadsheets in QPS so that I can share with clients?
Yeah, I think I understand that question. Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is you have tools. Actually, you have some enhanced tools as well within the companion to do weighting as it happens now. So weighting is a lot nicer to do in the companion than it was in Insight if you're an Insight user. But yes, you could design a spreadsheet where you told it what the parameters were. So maybe it was age within gender. You could then set up a matrix in Excel that had the targets you wanted. It could then go away and calculate the factors that are being applied. It could then give you a report that you could give to the client, for example, if you want to give them the factors that you're applying. So yes, I hadn't thought of that particularly, but it's a really good way that an add-in could be developed to handle weighting and share what's going on in the weighting and what factors are being produced with clients. So yes, very much so.
Okay, there's a couple of questions on MRDCL. You kind of touched on this briefly. How can I find out more about MRDCL? Is there a lot to learn?
Well, there's certainly a lot to learn. I mean, I say the sort of three levels of MRDCL user. We've got people who use it just to take advantage of the shortcuts, which are reasonably easy to learn. There's some familiarization with like any scripting language, but it's, once you've got over that first hurdle, it's actually has nice shortcut tools that can save you time. There's a sort of another level of user where you start to handle more complex things like, I referred to in some of the benefits of MRDCL, such as, when you've got occasion-based data where you're collecting what people eat at 20 meal occasions, that's almost impossible to analyze well in QPS. You need something that can handle repetitive sections of data. And that's sort of like the next level up, and learning how to handle data so that you can analyze it in the way you want is a sort of next step. And then you've got your real power users who, do really incredible things with spreadsheets. I know a client who used MRDCL to handle a huge tracking study where there were brands and sub-brands that produced all sorts of summary tables based on brands and sub-brands that were changing month to month in the tracking study. And that was all controlled by a very powerful workbook that had all the information in it, and MRDCL read that and produced hundreds of tables automatically. I think it reduced the man days spent on the project from 30 down to 1. They were spending 30 days a month on this project in another piece of software. They moved it first of all to QPS and then into MRDCL, and they got it down into 1 day per month. And that was a fantastic benefit in productivity. So yes, there's plenty to learn. The way to learn it, to answer the other part of your question, is that we have, I think it's about 40 videos, 50 videos, right through from beginners through to covering particular topics, and then on to some of the real power features. Don't start with the power features, start with the beginner stuff. But if you want to take a trial for a month for us and follow those videos and try some things yourself, you're very welcome to. So quite a long answer to that question, but hopefully that answered it.
Can MRDCL do significance testing like QPSMR?
Yes, yes. I mean, anything QPS can do, MRDCL can do, because QPS is really just using a subset of the things that MRDCL can do. And so QPS uses, I don't know, 10% of the things that MRDCL can do, the most important 10%, and that's why QPS is able to be a standalone product. So it's a sort of, like a 90-10 rule almost, like it does 90% of the things you want to do, but MRDCL has productivity benefits and things that QPS just can't do. But yes, anything QPS can do, MRDCL can do, and probably do it more easily as well in most cases. So yeah, yes is the answer to that.
This question has literally just come in. How can we get CL syntax?
I'm not quite sure I get the question. I mean, learning how to do it, there's videos that teach you how to do it. Inside QPS, you have that. if I go back, if I come off this screen and go back to one of the projects I used. So if we go back to Addins, let's go to, which one should I go to? Here we are. So let's go back to the first project I had. So in here, let's do a new one. So in here, you can type in any CL syntax commands that you like. So I could in here say table 1 is Q1_1 $banner, which is a perfectly good, if I can type properly, it would be perfectly good command. So I can type that command in there, and I could also type a series of commands that'll let you do one line. If you wanted several lines, you could put everything into one text file in Notepad, and you could just call it here by just saying insert myfile.stp, and you could have a whole series of commands. But that should just run as a table now, provided I've actually used variables that really exist. Hey, there it goes. I took a chance, and sure enough, I've got Q1_1 by banner because I typed in that bit of syntax there. So you can get access to the CL syntax there. What you don't get in QPS is a lot of the things that you can do with data and building more complex variables. That's what you don't get in QPS, because you can only do this within a table stage. You can't do it within the QDF part, if you like, when you're defining your questionnaire. You can only get access to the syntax in here. But yeah, you can start to practice with it. You can start to look at when I showed you the STP it produced earlier in the session, you can start to learn bits of syntax, and you can start to type it in here. Or you can just say, well, I'm going to put a whole string of things in here, and I'm going to put in my commands in a file called fill.stp. For some reason I'm in caps, and that will just insert all the code from a file called fill.stp that you might have put into an editor via Notepad. I mean, spreadsheets is also something that you can obviously use spreadsheets, provided you've got an Excel license or a Google Sheets license to make an Excel file, to read instructions from that if there's a script that can understand that workbook. And I know people who use spreadsheets to put in all of their table analysis specifications, because it offers more power and more ways of doing things that are over and above what QPS can do. So, people have designed spreadsheets that do that. But there, you can get access to the syntax there. Look at the STP files, and you'll start to learn some of that syntax, all the videos that we can give you access to.
Okay, and the last question is Table Indexer really free, or are there any hidden charges?
No, it's totally free. No hidden charges. Easy answer, that one to finish on.
Fabulous. Okay, well, I think that's it for the questions. This webinar was the last part of our getting the most out of your software series. The next series is we're moving on to identifying the problems with delivering client expectations and helping to solve these. As Phil mentioned, we'll be sending out a recording of this webinar, and with that we will send a link so that if you would like to sign up to our next series, you can do so through that. But that is all for today. Thank you very much for attending. I'm sorry we overran slightly, but have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.